All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope that you have hopefully your lunch kind of on standby. I think I have some hot pockets here just ready to go. It is lunch and learn, so a little bit of lunch while we're learning is hopefully a little bit appropriate in order. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment. I know a couple of additional people are likely going to be just popping in as we get things started, as uh, before lunch meetings kind of end, before lunch projects kind of end. You get to get your lunch on the way, and hopefully you learn just a little bit over the next half hour with regards to remote access, VPN security, especially in the way of COVID. What works, what doesn't work, what should you do, what shouldn't you do? Over the next half hour, we're going to be going over these concepts, and we're going to be leaving some 5 to 10 minutes at the end just for any questions that anyone has here when it comes to these concepts or any other questions that you have when it comes to VPNs and remote access, just so that hopefully we can all get something really good out of this and, uh, you know, make our organizations just a little bit better. Most of you probably already know me and my wonderful smiling and enthusiastic face. I'm trying real hard to be smiling enthusiastic today, but not feeling quite the best. There's some colds going around, especially with our kids going in and out of school. But I'm the CISO over at Merit. Over 20 years in cybersecurity, in education and nonprofit. And again, very happy, joyful, and passionate when it comes to cybersecurity and trying to get cybersecurity concepts, tools, techniques, anything out to all of you. I have a cacophony of cybersecurity certifications, and hopefully being, using a lot of this knowledge to educate everyone here today with some of these remote access and VPN concepts. So we're going to get things started right out. And if you do have any questions and you don't want to wait till the very end, that's absolutely fine. Go down to either the top or the bottom, depending on how you love Zoom, and just go ahead and put that message over in the chat. I have this open on my other monitor, and that'll help remind me if you do have any questions. I can either answer them in line or I can wait till the very end. No problem at all. But I do want to make sure that you get everything out of today that hopefully you would like to get out of spending a half an hour during your lunchtime learning about this sort of stuff. So just to begin with, kind of like this is the intro as well as the conclusion. I'm going to just let you know just straight up right now. We have remote access VPNs. They exist. They exist because they solve business problems. And we're going to talk about those business problems really briefly, but at the same time, they are going to create technical problems. So, we solve one thing, we create another thing. Not that we can't fix that, we absolutely can, but we just need to realize that it is something that needs to be addressed. And threat actors out there, big or small, sophisticated or not, they love using VPNs to hack you. That is part of that technical problem that we're going to solve. And there are a variety of remote access solutions that you can use if you're going to be allowing people to, to do business outside of your physical location, which virtually all of us have been doing with the advent of remote work with the difficulties of COVID. And securing those does not have to be difficult. Any VPN or remote access solution, through a combination of both thoughtful design as well as tweaking the knobs and buttons on the inside, can be configured securely. So there are problems. We need to solve the problems. The problems can be solved relatively well. So if we take just a little bit of step back and we just, I'll say, question some of the assumptions that we've literally just had for a really long time, like why do we need to have VPNs? Why do we need to have remote access? There is this very long-standing concept, both good and bad, of this location-based security. The fact that we want to have it is a really good cybersecurity concept because it can really minimize your attack surface that you're exposed to. There is this concept called zero boundary security or zero network security, zero access security, with the whole idea being that everybody and everything is remote. So we need to treat everybody with a great level of suspicion whenever they're accessing any of our systems. But if you look at how networks have kind of like been designed and how they've evolved over the course of the last 20 to 30 years, it's been kind of the case that, you have your organization, it lives at a physical presence, right? Like you have an office, you have a building, you design your network within that building, and you trust everything within that building to some extent. So that is this concept of location-based security. The idea that you typically have a physical firewall or multiple firewalls at that boundary before the traffic leaves your organization, before it leaves that physical building, basically gives you this concept of you have the haves and the have-nots. The haves are the ones that you have inside of your building. They're the ones that can access your servers, access your management interfaces, do your things, do your business inside of your organization. And then there are the have-nots, the ones that are outside of your organization. But of course, we have business requirements in some way that means that we have to break that design of allowing everything inside your network and stopping everything outside of your network, right? And this was even just simply before COVID. We had certain design goals that we needed to, address somehow. And like, here are four of them. The big one, naturally, having people being able to work from home. If you have applications, if you have systems, if you have servers that only physically work in your building, but your building is closed, what do? You figure out how to get that access in, whether that's through a remote access system or shared desktops or VPN systems. This is the common thing that people have been doing over the course of the last 18 months. But even before COVID, we've been utilizing remote access, whether it is vendors that need to actually get in to manage systems. This is very, very prevalent when it comes to like management of building access systems or HVAC systems, where a vendor needs to actually modify something on a desktop in your environment. How are they going to have access to that desktop? Are they going to VPN in? Are they going to have some kind of a shared system? They need to get in. If you have a permanent partnership, I know I've worked with organizations where they've partnered with other business partners or potentially even other local organizations where like there is this permanent relationship. So access is needed from outside of your building. You may have a permanent VPN solution that is always on between them. It might be on demand, but we need to in any of these kinds of situations, what we're doing is we are breaking this methodology in which we just naively trust everything at our physical building, and we're allowing these exceptions to come in, right? And it's normally not a problem, but as I said, there are risks. There are risks of a remote access, and you know that there are risks of remote access. This really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone here, but it needs to be spelled out, primarily because in so many attacks that we have seen, it is the VPN that ends up being I don't call it the linchpin, because in any sort of large attack, it's literally 7, 8 different things that all go wrong, all at the exact same time. But VPN access is that thing that kind of gets everything started. It's either going to be VPNs or phishing or a combination of the two. And we saw this way, way, way back when Target got hacked or breached. That was a combination of improper user account control, and Target allowed vendors, contractors to VPN in. Hey, if I go back here, here's a common remote access solution. Target had a HVAC contractor that managed the HVAC systems on their stores, and they gave them a VPN account. Well, congratulations, that VPN account got hacked and compromised. There were no other compensating controls. And now all of a sudden, over the course of the next couple of weeks, that access was used to create more access up to the point where now there's malware running on every single cash register in Target North America. Oops, bad. The very large Colonial Pipeline hack from a couple of months ago, that came out because a VPN system was compromised. And making things even worse, it was not the main VPN. It was this old, kind of forgotten about, deprecated, but everyone was too scared to fully turn off VPN system. And I know that at many of our organizations, as we're in COVID, as we're learning to have remote access systems that work for all of our employees all the time, as opposed to just some of the time, we're learning to, and we are upgrading our VPN systems, but we may still have like an old Pulse Secure VPN system or like an old open VPN system that is still around that, is still there. We're looking to decommission. We haven't quite yet because I don't say we're scared to. We're not really scared, but we're worried about the consequences of deprecating our own equipment, not knowing if everything is properly documented, and knowing that there's consequences if systems go down. These are risks that we have because hackers are targeting VPN devices. We saw that Pulse Connect Secure VPNs were being actively targeted. Fortinet's firewalls and VPN systems were being actively targeted. So these are risks when we go with our location-based security and we're trying to open things up. Every time that you open things up a little bit, we need to know there are risks. How are we going to go ahead and remediate them? And as we're looking to remediate them, it's always important to know, and for me to make sure you all know, that these attacks that are going to come, they can either be really, really easy and unsophisticated, or they can be really, really targeted and sophisticated. And as we go and make sure that our remote access and VPN systems are secured properly, that our employees, our customers, our partners, when they access our internal systems through the VPN, that we have that secured, that we're addressing the fact that those risks can either be very low effort, just mass scanned, really, public vulnerabilities are really scanned for. Those are the really opportunistic ones that are relatively easy to defend against, as long as we're keeping things up to date and we're updating our VPN systems and any of their software on them. The more targeted attacks, though, this is where we start to look a little bit more into really multi-factor authentication, and knowing that you have an attacker that wants to attack you in particular. They'll typically be doing things like slow, methodical enumeration. They'll be doing targeted phishing campaigns against your employees to try and get their credentials. And that's why multi-factor authentication is so incredibly important. But these are two different strategies that attackers use. They don't realize they're using them, but we need to know about them, because this will inform how we're going to defend ourselves. Ultimately, though, the risks with remote work and remote VPNs is that ultimately you normally have absolutely zero control of those devices that are connecting up into your VPN. And if you're like, well, is that really, really a problem? Should I be worried about that? Should I be scared about that? I'm not going to say you should be scared, like quaking in your boots, right? Like, we're all professionals. These are all risks. We all have to deal with them. But my biggest worry about this is that think about all the effort that you put right now into controlling your desktops, your laptops, your endpoints. The fact that you have antivirus and anti-malware and proper group policy, that you have removed administrative rights and administrative privileges, that you know that bad things are not running on your managed environment. Depending on what you're doing with remote access, all of that effort can be completely wasted if you just allow any endpoint to connect to your VPN and attach to your network. Because now you may have shared computers, family computers, things that you don't know about connecting in deep into your secured environment. So there are a lot of different options that can kind of address that base problem, and they have different kinds of costs or opportunities. When it comes to what is absolutely the most secure, I really like to hang my hat on a virtualized desktop environment, because at this point, you are not allowing computers that you have no idea what's running on them to connect into your network. You have a nice, happy HTML web browser interface, and you're utilizing something like a VMware View or a Citrix kind of infrastructure. And you say, you know what? All we're going to do is provide you basically with a really fancy web application, and it is going to give you a desktop. So it doesn't matter that, your computer at home is riddled with malware because your kids keep clicking on everything on their computer, or that they're running as an administrator on their local desktop. All that can be done with a virtualized infrastructure, but with that being more secure, that is going to be more work and more cost for you to deploy, because it's not going to be as easy and straightforward. If you do want to get a little bit, I don't want to say less secure like it's bad, but as we kind of like go down this ladder of more secure to less secure, web-based browser VPN access is kind of like the next best thing. At that point, it's not a virtualized desktop, but really you can consider it like a virtualized web browser. If you know that your applications, the things that your staff are going to be able to access, can all be done just simply through a web browser, your VPN system can just simply give that to you, and you are browsing through everything through your VPN system instead of connecting directly and having potentially a web browser that your employees and your staff are using that has unknown plugins in it or is not being properly updated. They're using a version of Chrome or Firefox that's 6 months out of date. You can bypass all of that by having your VPN system just simply give you that web-based browser access. And as much as I kind of rip on like Pulse Secure and their offerings, that is something that like they do and they can do really, really well. Next, when it comes to remote access, this is really the case, I say client requested screen sharing sessions. And this is more of like the on-demand kind of situation in which you have maybe a vendor that needs to come in and take a look at something. So whether it's an HVAC vendor or an IT vendor that, needs to see what's physically on your screen, this can actually be really easy. You're literally in one right now. You're in Zoom. So whether it's Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams, or even something potentially akin to like TeamViewer, something where you're like on a call and someone says, hey, can you share a screen? Yes, let me do this and I can give you control. So this is like basically a one and done kind of situation in which the client, you, has the control. You dictate when that access begins and ends, and when it ends, congratulations, everything is good and secure, all back again. As we go down this list a little bit more, now we start to come into the more traditional remote access solutions. Client-based on-demand network connections, a very, very fancy way to say, this is the thing that you click on your computer that connects you, whether that's going to be Pulse Secure or Network Connect or Global Protect, or if you have a L2TP or a PPTP compatible VPN environment. This is where you have someone that is at home and they want to, quote unquote, launch the VPN and connect into your infrastructure. This is the next level of security. Again, I'm a little bit more concerned here because you don't have control over that client. You don't have control unless you have something like Global Protect or some of the Pulse Secure Network Connect profiles. In certain cases, you can limit and say, we will only permit people to connect if they meet these requirements. If they're running a updated version of Windows, if they are running updated versions of their browser, you need a little bit of intelligence there. And that's why you usually have that little piece of software on the remote computer in order to do that. You can still do a dedicated endpoint hardware firewall. I know some organizations that literally ship out a tiny little firewall to all of their employees, and then it automatically connects back to their environment. Again, the problem there is that you don't have a guarantee that the employees on the other end are using secured computers. So you're taking a little bit of risk there. Next up, we'll just I call it the standardized on-demand network connection. This will be like a traditional OpenVPN or WireGuard or PPTP VPN connection that does not have the added intelligence of the bullet point 2 up, where you can have a client that actually tries in some fashion to make sure that you have an updated computer. And then the least secure of all of these is just say, hey, you know what? I know what IP address you're coming from. I'm just going to let you through. And you write a firewall rule just to let that just to let that traffic go through. All these are options. All these I could probably go into ad nauseum for like an hour each. I'm not going to, because we only have about 9 minutes left here. But all this to say that all of these can be configured either securely or relatively securely. But what you need to do before any of these is figure out, what are your business use cases? What are you actually trying to accomplish? What are people trying to do? What is your business? What is your organization trying to do? And based on that, and based on the amount of interaction that they need to do, will kind of dictate which of these 3, 6, 7 bullet points you can potentially do. And you can utilize multiples of these. You don't have to hang your hat on just one of them. And no matter what you do, there is this concept called a split tunnel. And the whole idea with the split tunnel is that traffic that is destined for you goes through the tunnel, and traffic that is just people browsing Facebook, looking at pictures of cute cats on the internet, doing any other kind of non-productive work, that does not go through the VPN. And split tunnel should be enabled no matter what VPN solution that you use. Your primary VPN should not basically be I'll call it a magical traffic encryptor that everyone just uses. You know what, I call it quote unquote, just to make sure that all their traffic as they're traveling remotely or internationally is encrypted. If you really want to do that, if you want to have a service in which you can guarantee that people traveling around have their traffic on their mobile devices encrypted, if you feel that should be a thing, that's fine, you can do that. But keep that separate from this remote access system, because you want to make sure that only organizational traffic, only limited business traffic, only limited business purposes actually traverse and get into your network. Remember, we are creating an exception. Normally, if we're looking back at location-based security, only trusted things are in the inside. So we want to try and mimic that kind of as best we can and keep only trusted things inside of our network. We have to also realize that, you know what, all of our employees are not going to be equal. And I say this in a really, really good way. Inside of your network, you've worked really, really hard to segment it and keep different areas of your network in different places. We want to keep that the same. Your finance group is a lot different from your business development group, which is different from any kind of member support. Your different groups, your different teams in your organization need different things. So when your president connects into your network via remote access, they should have a lot different access than just say your IT department. Your IT department likely will have access to almost all of the keys of the kingdom. Not everybody needs that. And just like you do in Active Directory, you should have different roles, different OUs, different groups for people, and people have different access. You should have the exact same concept with your VPN system. And the beautiful thing is most VPN systems can actually synchronize with Active Directory. So these groups, Active Directory groups or other structures you've already created, you can already use, that's fine. And then you can create rules and policies in your VPN system to say, hey, you know what? The executive group can only have access to the web servers, but the IT group, they have access to everything, right? Minimum access needed for each group is really what you need to make sure happens, and not just allow everyone access to everything, which is kind of how VPN and remote access started. So it's time to grow up from that. Some of us have done that better than others, but that needs to be a design goal that you use. Number one thing though, I brought it up at the beginning. Number one, use number two, factor authentication for all of your VPN and remote access. Full stop, done. If you take anything away from today, take this away. And I don't care if you're utilizing Microsoft's MFA, Google's MFA, or you're utilizing a Duo for integration with the rest of your MFA, turn on two-factor authentication 100% for all of your VPN systems. Because if you don't, those hacks that we saw like 5 slides ago, they are going to happen. VPNs are how I see ransomware come in and take over organizations like yours, say members like ours, because Merit members have had this happen to them through VPN systems. And we're honest, we are not monitoring our VPN systems. We're not monitoring when people are trying to log in like crazy and brute force passwords. Turn on two-factor authentication and make sure that there are no other shadow IT or less than fully supported VPN systems in place that may be bypassing that, a la the whole Colonial Pipeline attack. Your VPN systems need to be regularly updated. And you know what? When they're updated, they're going to be rebooted. And I know, I get it. People don't like to reboot routers, switches, firewalls, VPN systems because it causes an outage. You want to know what? I hate to say it, you have to deal with it. You have to accept it. And this may be a problem because a lot of organizations are consolidating their VPN appliances into their firewalls. So that means not only rebooting a VPN, but you reboot your firewall. Typically, that means like the internet goes offline for 5 to 10 minutes. It is a necessary evil. I know it sounds bad or nasty when I just say deal with it and accept it, but the alternative is to not update your VPN system. And we know for a fact that attackers are looking and scanning for outdated VPN systems and remote access systems because they are vulnerable and they can be attacked. So I'll say we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So let's take the better way out, reboot and update your VPN systems and make sure that client access is only given to managed hosts only as well. So all of this is really couched in the fact that all of these decisions that you make should be in a policy somewhere. This should not be completely ad hoc. You can have a one-page Word document or Google document that says, hey, what is remote access? How do people do it? What do we allow and what do we not allow? And the real big thing here is you want to remove, again, what I'll call shadow IT, very, very well-meaning people who are trying to solve problems in which your remote access solutions were not solving. So they created their own solution. We do want to make sure we kind of get rid of that and know that we can have a menu, a suite of things. There were those 7 options earlier of different remote access solutions that you can have. Come up with those. Put them in your 1 or 2 page document that says what remote access is, what you can do, what you can't do. Talk to your business leaders, figure out what they're trying to do remotely, come up with those solutions and put them in the policy. So again, relatively straightforward, but we know we have remote access. Again, this is the intro as well as the conclusion. Told you what you're going to learn. Hopefully you learned it. And here's a summary. Remote access VPNs, they solve problems. Hooray, but they create problems because they're exposing things out to the internet, the big bad internet that everything is always attacking us on. So we need to make sure that we address that, because if we don't, we are going to come in for a very, very bad time. Threat actors are going to use VPNs to hack you. They did it for Target. They did it for Colonial Pipeline. Common security vulnerabilities or zero-day vulnerabilities are coming out for VPN and firewall systems. We need to stay on top of it. There are a variety of different remote access solutions. Selecting them isn't necessarily difficult, but we do need to think through the business requirements on why we need that particular solution and if it will work. But no matter what you pick, any VPN solution, whether it's a network design or an architectural design, we can end up doing that securely, even like quote unquote the least secure one at the very bottom of just allowing standards-based access in where you don't have smart clients. Even that we can do securely. When we start looking at network segmentation and two-factor authentication, we can add, we can increase and have other compensating controls to make sure that when you are exposed to the internet, you're not exposing yourselves in the wrong ways, and we're making sure that all of your employees can do the things they need to do so that you do not get hacked or compromised, and you can sleep better at night. So this was, again, hopefully a relatively quick, half a lunchtime, lunch and learn. The pitfalls, the joys, the tribulations, trials, the good and the bad on remote access and VPN security. If there are any questions that anyone has, feel free to go ahead and put those over in the chat. I do see we have one right now, or you can unmute yourself and ask. I'm going to take a quick drink of water before I get myself too parched. And then I do see that there is a quick question here.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah, one of the questions we do have is from Chris Green Hutchins. Are there industry best practices for planned outages, such as for updating the VPN?
Yep. So of course, again, with the VPN being really, really critical to a lot of organizations, I'd say the industry best practices are really focused around watching for security vulnerabilities, as I already disclosed, through your manufacturer. So, for example, if you have Pulse Secure VPN systems, you should subscribe yourself to the Pulse Secure security advisory list. Same thing with Palo Alto or any VPN or firewall device. And then internally, making sure that you have some sort of basically you create your own best practice on how quickly you want to update those systems. Typically, what I like to say is, like, for any vulnerabilities like that, unless it's, I'll call it a 0 day in which I'm seeing active exploitation, it's within 1 week. So you receive a security bulletin or notification saying bad things are happening. You have about a week to basically plan and figure out if the software update is going to break anything, and to communicate to your staff and employees that you're going to be performing this upgrade. Typically, the upgrade happens after hours, and you have already beforehand come up with a good time window. And that's going to include an hour of the day as well as a day of the week in which updates can be performed. And that literally depends on you and your staff. It could be very early on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday morning, or like I actually, like when I've worked with like public safety and police, they've actually said, you know what, we want our outages to be like in the middle of a Thursday morning, because that is when there is the least amount of crime. So we don't want things in the middle of the night. We need things to be up and alive in the middle of the night. So knowing at your organization, when can an outage be permitted? When can things be down to 10 to 15 minutes? That's something that hopefully you should have already discovered. If not, discover that now. And that is when you would do, I'll call it more regular security updates. But again, if it is going to be more of a 0 day vulnerability that you see that there's active exploitation going on, you get a notice that says, oops, like Fortinet has this big vulnerability. It's being exploited now. And here is the security patch for it. You really should patch this now. At that point, you're talking about emergency updates, sending out an emergency communication to your staff saying, hey, you know what? We are going to be doing this in 3 hours. We're doing an expedited review of the software. If there's anything absolutely emergent that can't happen, like email me back now, but otherwise we are updating this later today. So I'd couch all of this to say that industry best practices simply are that you have already an existing call it normal as well as emergency software patch schedule, and you just throw your VPN and remote access patching just directly into that, because you should be using these exact same concepts for your network devices and for your Windows and Mac clients, your Windows and Linux servers. It should all be uniform so that your staff and your community have that commonality. Great question. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, it looks like it's 12:35, a little bit over. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. We will be sending a recording out to everyone the next couple business days that has the link for the recording. It will also contain a link that has the registration for the next lunch and learn that we have in November, which is on administrator rights and malware. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and have a good day.